They weren't just survivors. They were titans of the Ice Age. Buried in bone and snow lies the legacy of a human species so powerful, so resilient, that if they walked among us today, they might outlift our strongest, outlast our toughest, and vanish before we even understood them. The Neanderthal wasn't a brutish footnote in history. He was a peak predator, a hardened father, a wounded warrior, and perhaps a forgotten version of ourselves. Long before the first city stone was laid or a flag ever flew, there walked another kind of human. Not a primitive version of us, but a parallel branch, the Neanderthals. They emerged some 400,000 years ago, surviving bitter cold, predators, and raw wilderness with no written language, no kings, no nations, only instinct, grit, and firelight. For over 350,000 years, they endured, thrived, and adapted to the brutality of Ice Age Eurasia. And then, just as mysteriously as they appeared, they vanished. Or did they? Because if you look close enough, in your bones, your blood, or your shadow, you might still find them there. The Neanderthal body wasn't clumsy. It was crafted by the cold. Every inch of their frame told the story of survival in a world ruled by frost and fury. Shorter than us, yes, but broader, heavier, thicker in bone and muscle. Their wide chests, powerful limbs, and dense skeletons made them walking fortresses against the elements. A Neanderthal didn't just resist the cold. He absorbed it, endured it, and moved through it with crushing force. Nature didn't give them elegance. It gave them efficiency. A body less about grace, and all about impact, protection, and power. The Neanderthal wasn't just strong, he was a biological weapon. With massive shoulders, thick femurs, and a chest built like a battering ram, his frame pulsed with raw, functional power. Modern strength athletes might train for years to match what he carried by nature. Scientists estimate a healthy male Neanderthal could generate the force of a 200-kilogram bench press, without a gym. Fueled by high natural androgens, his muscles were forged for close-range combat, not long chases. Hunting wasn't sport. It was war, and every spear thrust was a brutal, calculated burst of survival-driven power. Neanderthals didn't just lift heavy, they carried pain like armor. Their bones tell a story of violence survived: shattered limbs, cracked skulls, crushed ribs, all healed. Nearly every skeleton unearthed bears the scars of trauma, yet they lived on. One individual endured the loss of an arm, went blind in one eye, and deaf in both ears, and still survived for years. Without medicine, without surgery. What kept them alive wasn't just biology, it was loyalty. In a world of predators and peril, they stood by their wounded. Neanderthals bled, but they bled together. The Ice Age was no place for the timid. Neanderthals lived among monsters, cave lions, dire wolves, hyenas, and towering cave bears. And they didn't just flee, they fought. Bones bear the brutal evidence: claw marks, punctures, crushed skulls. Nearly 75% of remains show signs of predator conflict. But here's the truth. They weren't always the hunted. Neanderthals often initiated these deadly encounters, not out of recklessness, but necessity. They hunted predators, defended kills, protected their young. This wasn't prey behavior, this was warfare. They met the wild eye to eye, and sometimes tooth to tooth. To fuel their strength and survive the freeze, Neanderthals were metabolic engines. Every day, Their bodies demanded 4,500 to 6,700 calories, more than a modern endurance athlete. Their enormous barrel chests weren't just armor. They cradled lungs up to 40% larger than ours, pumping cold air through nasal passages nearly twice the size of a modern human's. Each breath was a calculated act of survival, warming, moistening, and driving oxygen to a heart built for effort. Measured today, they'd outperform Olympic rowers in raw lung power. And they did it all without coaching, supplements, or rest days. Neanderthals weren't distance runners. They were ambush predators. Their bodies tell the story. Short tibias for raw leverage, thick toes for powerful drive, and long Achilles tendons built for recoil and burst. Beneath the skin, their muscles leaned toward fast twitch dominance, the same fibers used by sprinters, wrestlers, and fighters. This wasn't a build for chasing antelope across open plains. It was for striking hard, fast, and close. In the dense forests and icy valleys of Eurasia, stealth and sudden force beat stamina. The Neanderthal hunted like a heavyweight, not a marathoner. Neanderthal hands weren't about elegance. They were forged for force. Their fingers were thick, their thumbs powerfully angled, optimized not for piano keys but for bone, hide, and stone. Grip strength in a Neanderthal likely dwarfed ours, allowing them to twist sinew, split carcasses, and shape rock with raw precision. But the tool wasn't just in the hand. Their front teeth, worn flat and grooved, served as a third hand, clamping, pulling, holding as they worked. These weren't clumsy brutes. They were craftspeople of the Ice Age, sculpting survival with flesh, bone, and bite. The Neanderthal brain was larger than ours, up to 1,600 cubic centimeters. But size wasn't the whole story. Their brains were shaped for a different world, more rounded skulls, larger occipital lobes, and expanded regions tied to vision and smell. They didn't paint caves for beauty. They read landscapes in darkness, tracked scents through wind and snow, and processed motion with deadly clarity. Their large eyes hint at night-adapted sight, essential in northern forests. While modern humans dreamt in symbols, Neanderthals thrived in sensation. Less poetic, perhaps, but no less intelligent. Just a different kind of genius. Neanderthals weren't gatherers. They were built to hunt and consume flesh. Isotopic analysis shows that up to 70% of their diet came from meat. Massive, dangerous prey like mammoths, woolly rhinos, and cave lions. Their jaws, broad and reinforced, were designed for heavy chewing, not dainty bites. While their bite force matched ours, their teeth were tools, gripping, scraping, tugging sinew and hide. They didn't gnaw bones to dust, but they processed meat with brutal efficiency. In the frozen silence of the Ice Age, every kill meant life, and Neanderthals were relentless machines of meat, muscle, and survival. They vanished from the earth, but not from our blood. Today, 2 to 4% of the DNA in most non-African people comes from Neanderthals, a silent inheritance written in our cells. It shapes our skin tone, hair texture, immune response, and even how our bodies store fat or handle testosterone. Some of us carry their pain thresholds, others, their circadian rhythms. These aren't relics. They're whispers of a life once lived in caves, under stars, in bone and ice. The Neanderthal isn't gone. He walks quietly beside us, encoded in our flesh, remembered in every breath we don't even know we take. Did Neanderthals die out, or did they become part of us? The end of their story is still debated. Harsh climate, disease, or competition with Homo sapiens may have all played a role. But another possibility rises from the evidence: absorption, not annihilation. They didn't vanish in smoke and blood. They merged, interbred, endured, not as a people, but as a presence within us. Bone by bone, gene by gene, the picture becomes clear. Neanderthals weren't crude cavemen. They were human, strong, soulful, and scarred. Not a footnote in history, but a thread woven into our own. At Prehistoric Shadows, we don't see Neanderthals as relics. We see them as reflections. They weren't just another species. They were a parallel humanity, shaped by fire, ice, and the fierce will to endure. In them, we find echoes of ourselves: the father who protects, the hunter who provides, the wounded who heals, and the tribe that remembers. Strength, loyalty, loss. These aren't fossils. They're timeless truths. The human story is not a ladder. It's a web of lives, intertwined by blood and dust. And the Neanderthals? They never truly left. Their shadows still walk beside us. If you find history in muscle and memory compelling, subscribe to Prehistoric Shadows. We don't just tell stories, we resurrect them. Subscribe for more deep human history. Comment: do you think Neanderthals would thrive in our world today? Share this with someone who thinks strength is only physical.